Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for What It Takes to Scale AI, an exclusive conversation from Crunchbase and Snowflake Ventures. I'm Sally. I run events at Crunchbase, and I'm excited to welcome you to today's discussion on one of the biggest questions facing investors, founders, product leaders, and go-to-market teams right now. What does it actually take to scale AI? Over the past few years, AI has moved from experimentation to execution. The market is shifting from AI novelty to AI durability, revealing which companies can translate AI into scalable products, infrastructure, and long-term advantage. We'll start with Gené Teare, our research lead at Crunchbase, who will unveil the headline findings from Crunchbase and Snowflake's new joint report. Then Gené will be joined by Harsha Kapre, head of Snowflake Ventures, for a fireside chat. Harsha is a seasoned product management leader and now leads Snowflake Ventures, where he focuses on investments that unlock new value on top of the Snowflake platform. They'll dig into those questions: what it takes to scale AI, how Snowflake's product and ecosystem are evolving with the AI data boom, and how Snowflake Ventures' investment thesis has evolved in this new market. You can ask questions at any point using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. We'll do our best to respond during the webinar, or we'll follow up after. Make sure you stick around after the fireside chat for some final remarks. So with that, I'm thrilled to hand it over to Gené to take us through the headline report findings.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Snowflake and Crunchbase webinar, looking at what it takes to scale AI. So in advance of the Snowflake Summit, we partnered on a co-branded report. And what we did is we looked at the Snowflake ecosystem, its partner network, its venture network, and the accelerator program, and then tied that to Crunchbase data to see if we could find some interesting findings around the ecosystem around Snowflake. And I think to kick off, the Snowflake Partner Network is at the center of Snowflake's ecosystem. And what we found is that they were very heavily concentrated around venture-backed startups. We found 1,300 companies in the ecosystem which are venture-backed. And across all of those companies since 2020, they've raised 113 billion, which is a huge amount. And we see similar trends in the data to what we see in Crunchbase data overall, that funding picked up in 2021. There were more deals happening in 2021. It slowed after that, after COVID, and then picked up again in 2025, but slightly more concentrated into fewer companies. But again, more than 30 billion in 2021 and close to 25 billion in 2025. So if we look at those numbers as a whole, as I said, around 1,300 companies, around 113 billion has been invested. But I think what's also interesting across the ecosystem is that you would think a lot of this was heavily skewed towards those late stage companies. But in fact, Snowflake is partnering at companies at the seed stage as more than a third of this ecosystem that we looked at. Around 37% of the companies were at early stage, and then around 29% at late stage. So Snowflake is partnering with private companies across the ecosystem at every single stage. Within Crunchbase, we've overlay our data with predictive analytics. So we looked at that data through looking at the Snowflake Partner Network. And what we found is around 44% of startups that had raised 5 million or more, we want to look at the companies who'd raised a little bit more funding, were likely to raise a follow-on round, which is a pretty strong proportion. And then, even though a lower proportion, but a very strong signal, we found around 29% of these companies were likely or probable to exit. Much of that was M&A, around 24%, and around 6 to 7% likely IPO targets. So, Snowflake partners heavily within data infrastructure all the way through to the application level. There are obviously some companies in this network which are valued targets for exits. We also looked at the data and overlaid it with our industry level data. And we did this by deal count in order for the large rounds not to necessarily skew what we're seeing from a sector basis. Obviously, artificial intelligence is driving everything today, and this was the sector that showed up the most by deal counts. Analytics, you would expect with a data-driven company, but there was a lot around cloud data services, data integration and data management, a lot around cybersecurity. We also saw more of those developer tooling come up through open source and developer tools show up as industry segments. And then all the way through to the application layer, there's enterprise software, business intelligence tools, as well as marketing and fintech showing up as some of those larger sectors. On the Snowflake Venture portfolio side, we tracked 68 portfolio companies. And Snowflake, these companies have raised since 2020 just over 14 billion. So a pretty sizable amount of funding to these 68 portfolio companies within the Snowflake Ventures portfolio network. To broaden this out and just look at broader venture capital trends, what we're seeing in our data, and this is the whole global venture ecosystem, and I think what this slide illustrates to me is how this is a growing asset class going back 15 years. And even though it doesn't necessarily grow year over year, over a time span, you can see this expanding. We saw expansion not only within the US ecosystem, but also globally in Asia, in China specifically, in India, and across Europe. In 2021, something very strange happened where funding completely doubled. And that was to do with COVID and everything moving online and moving digitally. And I think in retrospect, the market sees that as having overinvested in that short time frame. There was a pullback in 2022 as the public markets had a correction. And then you'll see that around 300 billion in 23 and 24, just as this new AI wave is picking up. In 2025, funding is growing again. So we're seeing a little bit more heat in the markets. And then Q1 2026, due to these very large rounds to foundation model companies, 302 billion, I think the biggest quarter we've seen ever in venture. This is looking at the same data, but passing it through how much went into AI. And even though AI was the dominant theme since 2023, it takes time for that to filter through. And so in 2025, we saw roughly 50% of dollars going into the AI sector. And then in Q1, because of all the large rounds for foundation model companies, that skewed massively towards the AI sector. This is looking at the foundational AI companies and how much they've raised. Again, it's illustrative that only in Q1 2026 do we see the majority of AI dollars go into that foundation model layer companies. In 2024, it's less than a third. In 2025, it's growing. And here we are in 2026 with this massive quarter in AI. So to kick off the conversation on what it takes to scale AI, I'd like to welcome Harsha Kapre, the head of Snowflake Ventures. Welcome, Harsha. It's great to have you here on the webinar. And to kick off, Harsha, can you tell us, what you see within Snowflake, what it takes for companies to scale AI?
Yeah, I think this is a question that's coming up a lot as we see a lot of hype around AI, but not a lot of production use cases and measurable outputs. We're starting to see some of that, but I think there's a lot of concern around what we're giving when we say AI, agents, or just in terms of trusting the answers that we're getting from the questions without the right audit trails, without the right governance. So when I think about what it takes to scale AI, I think it starts with the data foundation, right? Do you have the right data, the right governance around that data, the right trust in that data? And then on top of that, do you have the right context, right? The raw data by itself, even if it's trusted, doesn't necessarily give you the answers you're looking for. And you might not be able to trust those answers if the context of that data is missing. So it's that combination of context, governance, security around the data that really enables you to start to scale the AI. But that's just one piece of it, right? Then the next piece is, when you start to add models, you start to add agents on top, what do they have access to? Do they have access to the right things? How do you scope that access correctly? And can you measure it? Can you monitor it? A lot of times governance comes down to, can I at least know what happened, right? So I can at least trace back where something may have gone wrong and fix it. And so I think what we'll see is with the right data foundations coming into place with platforms like Snowflake, with more context being added through semantic capabilities, a lot of companies adding the context layer, we'll start to see more and more use cases rolling out. But I think customers are still looking for help with, how do I ensure my agents are secured? How do I ensure my answers are correct? And that comes through visibility and observability. And I think those controls, there's a lot of companies that are putting focus on there, and I think they're going to get a lot of attention. Once those first use cases start to go live and into production, there'll be more trust, and then I think we'll start to see a little bit of the domino effect.
Yeah, and Snowflake, as we were saying, is at the center of this very large ecosystem. You've got partners, you've got customers, you've got the accelerator, the venture program. So is there anything that ties this whole ecosystem together?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, we're a very customer-driven company, and I've come from a very strong product background, so everything I do is based on what customers are asking for and is there value in what we're trying to bring them, right? I think, when we think about an ecosystem of partners, any partner can build an integration with Snowflake. That doesn't necessarily mean it's a valuable integration. So specifically on the venture side, when we're looking at companies, we look at, okay, is this integration going to be something that differentiates from other companies in the space that extends the value of Snowflake? And by the way, that's the same, kind of reasoning or logic or kind of thinking we go through with any of our partnerships. The ventures is just a step above that, where we're looking for an even, bigger strategic lean from both Snowflake and the company. But it's the same story at the end of the day. We want to give customers choice of the tools that they use with the Snowflake platform. We want to extend the value of Snowflake, and the companies that really drive that better together story, drive that customer value, solve real customer problems. That's what ties all of these things together, and it's what we look for in all of our relationships.
So you talked a little earlier about all the guardrails that you need to set up data to work in the sort of agentic or AI world. So how has your product changed? And I've seen a lot, we use Snowflake extensively here at Crunchbase. So how has the product changed in order to meet the demand of all of these customers?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think, a lot of times people still think of Snowflake as the data warehouse company, right? Because that's what really brought us on scene years ago. I mean, back in 2017 and 18, that's who we were. I think we've evolved from that into a full data platform, but I think there's even another evolution happening now, and it's been really amazing to see under the leadership of Sridhar how quickly we've accelerated from just a data platform to also an AI execution platform. And I think that biggest shift that we've seen is really coming from the rise of agentic solutions. But with Snowflake in particular, it is the AI suite, the Cortex AI set of capabilities that have really changed who we are, right? So now, not only do you have the data, the governance, the security perimeter that companies have come to trust with Snowflake, but you've also got the ability to run Snowflake Intelligence, which is essentially the talk to your data interface for the users. You've got the Cortex code. So now you have the coding agent, so you can build and develop whatever you need, really focused on the developer today. But you've also got the agent APIs and capabilities for building and deploying agents for the more autonomous and automation work that you need to do, the workflow capabilities. And so, model training, inference services, the ability to bring your own models to run on Snowflake, all of those, core ML and AI capabilities are now, out of the box with the Snowflake platform.
Yeah. And is that changing the companies you're partnering with at this stage?
It is to some degree. I think there's always going to be a place for kind of the core value partners who are helping bring more data to Snowflake and helping to drive more insights from Snowflake. But I do think that the type of partner we're starting to look at has changed for sure, right? We are looking at who is extending beyond just what we were in the past, where we were really on the data platform side. Governance is still important, security is still important, so we're still looking at companies in that space. But now, who extends the Cortex capabilities? Who can be a distribution engine for our Cortex code? Who can help with whatever lens? Like I said, choice of tools for customers. If we have a company that is a very user friendly and very well liked by the business, but it integrates and leverages the agent capabilities under the covers, that's a great partner for us to have because we want to meet the customers where they are. So to your point, I think it's any company that's really extending and accelerating the value of our AI capabilities.
Yeah. And is the developer community becoming more important in the space? That's what I keep hearing across the network.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Cortex Code in particular has really opened up the developer persona even more so than we had in the past. And I think it even goes beyond the developer. Everyone on my team is using Cortex Code on a daily basis. Everything I'm doing, it's going through Cortex Code, understanding what data I have in Snowflake, getting the data into Snowflake. It just has the ability to interface with all the right systems and bring you what you need and really simplify the development process. I'm hearing stories left and right from customers who are developing applications on Snowflake that they never thought they could do. our own sales engineering team developing POCs and demos that would take weeks, in a matter of hours or days. It's really remarkable, and seeing the adoption. I think we have over 4,000 customers who are using Cortex Code. So that developer persona, beyond Snowpark, beyond some of the API capabilities we had, beyond native applications, I think we're really seeing an explosion of developers, with the capabilities like Cortex Code and the other AI building blocks.
Got it. And are you seeing agentic AI use cases begin to take off? It still seems very early.
We are. I mean, I think it is a little bit early. We do have, I have a couple examples of customers who have already started to, kind of jump on the agentic capabilities, but, using agents and using our agent API to create those agents and have them essentially start to drive more automation. I think it's happening across the board. I think, we've seen Snowflake Intelligence as one, our first kind of real foot in the door with AI, and that was one of the fastest growing products we saw with 2,500 plus customers in a matter of months. Cortex Code I mentioned already, and then the agent API. I think there's two companies. Whoop is one where they developed an agentic chat application just to make data more accessible, right? Democratizing. It doesn't have to be these huge, sophisticated, complicated workflows, but there are things that can be automated, things that can be simplified. You can save, I think they saved like 3 resources that were spending time on in this area very easily. And then there's another company called TS Imagine. They built an agent that's combining data tools, all of this stuff for customer service, right? 60,000 inquiries a day being handled by this agent. So there's a lot of success stories here, just with our agent platform. But like you said, it's in the very early stages. So we're expecting this to accelerate quite a bit.
Yeah. And do you think 5 years out, Snowflake, where is Snowflake going to be? Because we're seeing, your business, Snowflake's business is growing, the market's getting larger, competition's increasing. Do you have a perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've always had the approach of being kind of the full stack platform, right, with the data as the foundation. I do see us becoming kind of the control plane for the agent economy, and really being able to support the processing and the data for everything you're doing with the agents. Whether the agents are running on Snowflake or running on other capabilities, I think you'll start to see that we start to expand across an ecosystem and enable with the data foundation that we have, with iceberg tables already out there. You no longer have to have all of your data in Snowflake, right? Data can often reside where it is, but we bring that security perimeter to that data. And I think bringing that agentic perimeter with security across those different systems, across the different data types, I think that full stack approach is going to be simplified in the next 5 years. And companies are going to look at Snowflake as really the foundational layer for everything they're building in terms of agents and workflows and applications.
Got it. Sounds very exciting. So Harsha, I mean, you've borne with me and talked a lot about Snowflake. I want to switch to Snowflake Ventures. So you've led that for the last 4 years. So what's the investment thesis for Snowflake Ventures?
So the good news is the investment thesis maps very, very well to what we talked about already, which is the better together story. And it's just about how deep we go in that better together story. If we have a partner who's willing to lean in on Snowflake, build integrations that our customers are asking for, we have an extensive partner program that's designed for that. Snowflake Ventures is meant to be, how do we identify companies that we can go even bigger with, right? Where customers are saying, I wish it did this. They've already have some traction. We're already seeing some signals, but the customers would really like a seamless solution. How close can we get to that if we start at the architecture level? So everything we do on the venture side really starts with an architecture discussion about how is that solution using Snowflake today, or how is it integrated with Snowflake, and what can we do to make that a very seamless capability for the customers. And of course, we look at, is it solving a problem that we know our customers are looking for, and that also then drives a very obvious go to market motion which we can put behind that. So it's nothing, no rocket science behind it. It is really tied to our partner ecosystem and our existing strategy, but it's just really taking that next step to say, let's create something really differentiated, really unique, and let's take it to market together.
Yeah. And where are you focused now with AI 3 years in? Are there specific areas that you're very focused on investing in, or is it more, what comes across your desk?
Yeah, I mean, there's always an element of what comes across the desk in terms of opportunistic fundraising because we don't lead rounds. So, companies that aren't leading rounds, we still partner with them, but they might go through a different channel. But with that said, we do have, three core tracks that we look at. One is our core platform track. This is what we talked about earlier. Companies that are extending our core AI capabilities, core governance capabilities, core security capabilities, but all with an eye towards the AI future, right? How are we enabling agents to be more secure? How are we enabling developers to do more with the data that they have and build more of what the business needs? How are we empowering the business with more access, right? So part of the problem isn't just that the business needs insights; they also have issues getting access to data. One of the company examples or customer examples I gave you was just about that, opening up access. So when we think about that, the core platform is companies that extend and accelerate our own capabilities, help us kind of drive deeper value by building on top of the foundation, the AI foundation that we've built. The second track is the industry or domain category. This is where industry solutions with proprietary data that really amplifies or multiplies or compounds the value as you bring more data to the platform. So these are solutions where you've got domain expertise, you've got someone who's lived and breathed the challenges of that industry or that domain, and they're bringing a solution either built on or deeply integrated with the Snowflake platform. Those are extremely valuable and interesting to us as we break into those new markets or expand our traction. And then the third track is really the one kind of a little bit more towards the opportunistic side, right? I hate to say it's a market disruptor category because at this point everybody's a market disruptor until you learn more. But we do reserve a portion of our time to look at companies who are just bleeding edge, right? They're the ones that are doing something really interesting. There may not even be an obvious Snowflake integration story on day one, but we think with where we're going and where that company is going, there is something for the future. And so therefore we're looking to make strategic bets on those type of companies as well.
Yeah. And why should founders want Snowflake Ventures as an investor?
I think the simple answer to that question is the customer channel, right? So what we really bring to the table at the end of the day is go to market and the customer channel. That's the value that we bring to these partnerships. That is why partners are so eager to partner with Snowflake in the first place, and that is what we try to really lean on when we're doing our investments. So we look at companies that are obviously making commitments to the Snowflake platform, and in return, we're going to take that company to market. So when we evaluate companies, our first look is always, can we take this to market? Will our field care? Because by the way, something I've learned over the years at Snowflake is if the field doesn't care, you can't do anything. You can put partner managers, resources on it. It's not going to go anywhere. So we have to do some work on our side to make sure this is something the field understands that they are going to want to bring this joint solution into their customers. It's going to help drive more consumption for them. And so at the end of the day, especially for the early stage startups or even the Series A companies that are looking for that, we've got something, we've got some customer feedback, we really want to, multiply that effect. We can be that customer channel for you, and we look for a commitment to Snowflake in return.
So wonderful, Harsha. Thank you. I appreciate you joining us here for the webinar, and I'll see you at the summit.
Great. I'm very happy to be here. Really enjoyed talking with you, and I will see you at Summit as well.
Thank you, Gené and Harsha, for such a thoughtful conversation. We covered a lot of ground, but before we go, I quickly want to touch on why Crunchbase's partnership with Snowflake is so powerful. Crunchbase brings unmatched private market intelligence directly into Snowflake, combining foundational company and financial data, insights that analyze past and present company trends, and predictions that forecast future company events like funding, growth, exits, layoffs, and closures. With access to Crunchbase's real-time and forward-looking data inside the systems where teams already work, organizations can move beyond reactive analysis and static inputs and toward confident decision-making based on what will happen, not what has happened. For investors, that can mean identifying promising companies earlier, understanding where capital is flowing, or tracking momentum across a portfolio. For go-to-market and business development teams, it can mean prioritizing the right accounts, understanding market shifts sooner, and spotting opportunity or risk before it becomes obvious to the broader market. This private market intelligence doesn't live outside of your stack. It sits securely inside Snowflake, enabling governed, scalable analysis while giving teams a shared, forward-looking view of the market. That's really the broader theme of today's conversation. The companies that win in the AI era won't just have models. They'll have the ability to operationalize trusted data directly inside their workflows because AI is only as powerful as the data foundation and context behind it. If you're interested in using Crunchbase's data and predictions within your governed Snowflake environment, we're happy to share more information. Just respond to this poll and our team will follow up. So as we close, I'd leave everyone with this. Scaling AI requires more than ambition. It requires the right data foundation, the right ecosystem, and the right market intelligence to know where to focus. We hope today's research and conversation gave you a sharper view into where enterprise AI is heading and what it will take to build, invest, and operate successfully in the next phase. Thank you again for joining Crunchbase and Snowflake Ventures. We look forward to continuing the conversation at Snowflake Summit, June 1st to 4th in San Francisco. Come say hi to me at Crunchbase's booth 1103. If you're not able to attend Snowflake Summit, there's also a free program called Dev Day for AI practitioners and startups to hear from industry visionaries, such as Peter Steinberger, the creator of OpenClaw. There's a free one-day event in San Francisco and virtual programs in North America and Europe this June. Scan the QR code to learn more. We hope to see you there.